And I mean, that's how I really see vitality. I see vitality as a really powerful helper and guide that can be with that hero all along the way, so that they have that edge to make the better decision, to stick with something, because while it's hard right now, future you is really going to appreciate it, and to be able to help them kind of hold that in their mind's eye while they're working with the hard thing. So that's really the thing that like keeps me motivated, and it's not even about keeping me motivated. I mean, it's very motivating. It's very exciting because you see it all the time, both personally and professionally, with individuals that are navigating healthcare in the US. It is incredibly challenging.
This is Inspiring Women, and I'm speaking with Kristin Rodriguez, and we are at the WBL Annual Summit, and Kristin just took a new job. She is the Chief Product Officer at the Vitality Group. I'm going to be talking to her about that. Kristin, thank you for being on Inspiring Women.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I think you're so excited because we're sort of like at that part of the conference where you've done 10,000 steps in a day, and you still have energy for this. So I'm excited that you do have that energy. So let's get in. So Kristin, I always want to start with sort of like the bio sketch, but I want to start even before that.
Okay.
Let's do it a little differently this time. So when, in the way back machine, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Gosh, well, there's a two-part answer. So what I wanted to be was I really wanted to own my own coffee shop and sit in the corner and write the next great American novel. Like that was always plan A. And but I come from a military family, and so there was a lot of energy around service and around military service as well.
Okay. And so did you go into the service? Was that part of what you've done over the years?
I ultimately decided not to.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I did serve. I participated in NJROTC, which is kind of a training ground, unofficial training ground for kids that well, really for me it was I didn't want to do PE. To be clear, I like being active, but I just didn't like changing my clothes in the middle of the school day. That was too much.
Okay.
So JROTC was a different option to PE, but very quickly became a really viable path to college. Was something that, of course, my dad, who's a retired Marine, was really excited about. And I learned a lot. I ultimately was the COO, which is like the president of the club, so to speak.
Awesome. Okay. So plan B, you're not writing the next novel, although maybe that's in your future, and you don't have a coffee shop. And so what was plan B? What happened? Give us a little bit of the bio sketch.
Well, when I left high school, I actually did have a full ride to the Naval Academy. So that was plan A. It was to go into the Naval Academy and then ultimately serve. And then I kind of did a full 90 degrees somewhere else. 17, I was sure that I had a better idea of what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And really confident in my ability to make long-term decisions at 17. So I decided not to go to the Naval Academy, and instead I kind of did a bohemian walkabout. Honestly, there was about a 2-year period where I worked a lot of different kinds of jobs. During that time, I think ultimately I've actually attended 7 different colleges.
Okay.
I attended college in Louisiana, in Florida, in Tennessee, and ultimately landed in California.
Okay.
And it was around, I was 20 years old when I finally said, okay, I need to get serious here.
Yeah.
I need to finish this degree. I need to get this done. And so I ultimately transferred.
What did the military family think about the 7 different colleges and the bohemian walkabout? Just curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so to be clear, very loving family. My parents definitely wanted me to feel good about what I was doing.
Yes.
I think they had no idea what that was. My mom used to say, as long as it's legal, honey, like as long as it's legal, but otherwise we're pretty supportive and loving throughout, and then when I ultimately transferred into Berkeley, I mean, maybe it's not Annapolis, but Cal's still pretty cool. So, I feel like they appreciated that.
They were okay with that.
Yeah, they were okay with that.
Okay. So then you started to move into marketing and communications, and you started to run things. So give us a little bit of that experience, and then also the pivot to healthcare.
Yeah. I like to say I fell into healthcare sideways. That's definitely the start of my healthcare journey. So, when I was working through college, 6 years, I worked through it. I met my husband before I graduated. We ultimately got married right before I graduated from Cal. And at the time, we thought we wanted 6 children.
Oh my gosh.
Just for the record, I do not have 6 children. That this is an important
Oh,
call out. So I only
oh,
have 2.
okay. Okay.
So that we did a pivot there in the
With
middle.
4 more coming in a new novel. Got it.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. There's a lot of plans at work here. But no, so we started having kids young because we thought, oh, like we want a lot of them. We should get going. And you know, it's amazing how kids change everything.
Mhm.
So I was on a very different career path. I was actually in sales. I don't really like sales, but that was a job that I had.
Sales is a job of leadership. That is for sure.
This is true. You do learn a lot by just pounding the pavement and having to walk up into places and say, hey, hi. My name's Kristin. Can I speak to you about your packaging?
Yes.
I worked for a packaging company in Silicon Valley. So we sold $500 boxes that $10,000 lasers would fit into. So
Okay.
it was a really special job. But so I had my son. And at the time, between my work schedule and my husband's work schedule, we kind of had this epiphany where we thought to ourselves, neither one of us is going to actually ever see this kid because of just our schedules. He's basically going to grow up in daycare. And I said, well, that doesn't really work for me now that I'm really thinking about this, you know, that I mentioned we started young, so we didn't really think about things in advance. And so I said, okay, well, I need a new job. And it was really just that simple. So I had a really clear parameter list of this is what I need the new job to be. Nothing on that list actually involved what the job was. It was just, it needed to be these hours. It needed to allow this flexibility. It needed to be about this pay, and basically just was like, okay, what fits my needs?
That sounds very Gen Z.
Does it?
Yes.
Okay. And so I ended up with a role at Financial Research Associates, which now has been purchased. And I started out as a conference producer for them, which, you know, and that was, I got to tell you, that was one of the coolest jobs ever. So it was total accident that I got it. But man, I learned so much and really fell in love with one of the things I'm still in love with today, even in my job now, which is just really caring about the customer and falling in love with their problem and staying in love with their problem the whole time.
What were those types of problems that you were solving at that point in time?
I started out with financial management conferences. So hedge fund managers. They felt like they had really big problems. I don't know that I agree with the problems that they were worried about, but so I learned a lot about financial management and risk management around hedge funds. And so I did a lot of conferences there. And then I was a few months into the role, and my boss walked into my cubicle and she handed me this huge, thick printout. And she said, this is something new. We haven't really done a lot in this space, but take a read. And see what you think. Like, could we do a conference around this? Could there be something? And what she had handed me was my very first CMS call letter. And it was when risk adjustment really became a big deal, right? It was the first year that CMS started attaching penalties and the Red V was introduced. And so I'm reading it, and I did a few exploratory calls, and of course figured out really quickly, yes, this is a big deal. And yes, there's going to be a lot of problems here. And so that was really my first moment in healthcare, was learning, well, okay, what is this risk adjustment thing? And oh, what's Medicare? And what's CMS? And so just a huge learning curve.
Okay. So you figured out how the hedge funds works, and they don't really have real problems. Now you've got CMS figured out. And so then you go on from conferences to what?
I was recruited from Financial Research Associates to Gorman Health Group, which has since been bought by another organization, Convey. And I joined them as their very first kind of executive director of marketing. Up to that point, Gorman Health Group had sold really how a law firm sells. The partners source the deals. And they really wanted to evolve that into a more methodical, kind of data-oriented approach. They also wanted to think through kind of not a community-based, but kind of like a network-based way of monetizing their content. And so that was the second time I created something new. I ended up creating a product for them called The Point. And at the time, it was the first time I think that a firm in the healthcare space had thought about, we don't have to just do content marketing. We can actually monetize this and create kind of a lower entry point to engaging with the consulting firm.
Okay. So like at this point, you're sort of like falling into the next job and the next job, but there's a theme of curiosity, learning new things, and then now being put into positions of leadership. So let's sort of fast forward
Sure.
to today and the Vitality Group, and congratulations on the new role. Did you seek this role? Were you sought after for this role? Just before, like, how did you get to this new organization? And then I want to talk about the Vitality Group.
Yeah, so this one actually, this was the first time so I've been in healthcare now around 17 years, and this is the first time that I actually like went out looking for a job. So then I'd been very fortunate. It's a really weird flex, like people always come find me, but I had always been very fortunate that was how it happened. And this
Usually
case,
it's for a reason. Usually it's something about the you that makes that happen. Just saying.
I'll take it. Thank you. Thank you. So in this case, I had been with Health Plan Alliance, fantastic organization for a really long time. And I had just kind of gotten to a spot where I felt like, I think I'm ready for the next thing.
Yep.
Whatever that is. And I didn't have a parameter. I didn't have a clean list of, here's everything it has to be. Had some ideas, but was much more open to like, well, let's see what's out there. And so Vitality and I had a little bit of a long courting period, I suppose you could say. Funny enough, it actually first crossed my path at a WBL events.
Oh, really?
So we
interesting.
can just plant that little seed there for later if we want to talk about that. But so Vitality, they have a relationship with the Health Plan Alliance. And so I sat with them. A big capacity of my job at the Health Plan Alliance was sitting down with vendors and listening to their pitches and kind of talking through, where I see it resonating with regional payers, where I see the gaps. And so I did that with them. And what I'm told is that after that conversation, they hung up and were like, wow, like that was a lot of dots getting connected, a lot of, me thinking, well, if you do this, then have you thought about investing here? Because then you could go to the next thing, et cetera. And so, it was a few months of just exploratory conversations and ultimately, in December, made the shift and started in early January.
Well, it's a big job. Okay. You're the chief product officer. So you're doing both strategy as well as what else? Like, what does the job entail? And what does the organization do? Maybe start there.
Sure. Vitality's core purpose is to make people healthier. It's really simple.
Okay.
But not easy.
Not simple.
Right. Not easy to do. Vitality is actually part of a large international firm called Discovery Health. And the technology that Vitality has is over 30 years old. And globally, over 30 million people are on this platform. At its core, it's a behavior change platform. It looks at data and behavior science and bring those two things together with a layer of incentivizing to get the person to do the thing that they should be doing. We all know there's things we should be doing.
It's so hard. Okay. So, but this is such a hard thing to do. So like, is it working? How is it working? Because so many platforms are trying to do this. And yet we just know that behavior change is the hardest amount of change that there is. And some of the behaviors are just like the simple things like, whether it's diet or gee, I wanted to sleep a little bit longer than actually do the exercise in the morning. I mean, those are hard things to break.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the big thing that actually drew me to Vitality is there are a lot of new platforms out there that are looking at behavioral science and that are looking at, we'll do a layer of, rewards and incentives to, kind of bribe someone into like closing the care gap or whatever the thing is that the risk holder is looking for them to do. The secret sauce that I think Vitality has is one, this is not a guess. This thing's 3 decades old. And there's millions of people using it. The platform is powered by a data set of 60 million life years. And that number is so big, it almost feels like, okay, like what? But so what that means is that when we're training models or we're pulling insights from that model, the level of understanding and just the breadth of that experience is so meaningful. So there's really 2 models that work together here. One is the propensity model, which is, okay, so, we need Kristin to get up and start moving. How likely is she to do that based on what we know, based on how she interacts with the app, based on the habits that we know she already has? And then on the other side of that equation, we know, okay, well, based on Kristin's health risk profile, we really need her to stop smoking. I don't smoke with our example. We really need her to stop smoking, but maybe Kristin just isn't open to that. Well, okay, but we can surface something else for her. We can lower the hurdle. So this is where that behavioral science piece comes in and really understanding, okay, it's not just about nagging Kristin, okay, quit smoking, quit smoking, quit smoking. Anybody who's married knows that doesn't actually work, right? The nagging thing really doesn't work. But if you offer up something else or lean into the biases that we all have around behavior change and really use that science, then you can start to plant seeds. You can start to get that person to.
What about medications? I mean, there's also, I mean, clearly in the world of, so whether we're dealing with, obesity or other conditions, but we have new medications out there, Ozempic, all of those types of things. Does that play into what you're doing at Vitality? Are you thinking about that, or how does that integrate or not integrate with your solutions?
Totally. Absolutely. I think we think about medication. So you mentioned like the GLP-1s. I think this is a huge thing. One of the pieces that we have in our playbook is we call it our dynamic contribution manager. And so this is a really powerful element of behavior change is, all of us, when it comes to healthcare, there's kind of two parts of our brain, I think, when we're engaging with the healthcare system. One, of course, is just, okay, as an individual consumer of healthcare, there are certain things maybe I should be doing differently, like eating more vegetables, et cetera, go get my flu shot. And then the other side of it is healthcare is really expensive. And when we talk about the GLP-1s, obviously this is a huge potential expense for any risk taker.
Healthy food is expensive.
Indeed. Yes, it is. And so the dynamic contribution manager is one lever that's available for a risk holder where, let's say, for example, an employer decides, okay, we do want to cover GLP-1s for weight loss. Then you can have this layer of a dynamic contribution manager where if an employee says, okay, I would like to use this, my clinician has evaluated me, I'm a good candidate, they want to prescribe it. Then this dynamic contribution manager can say, okay, we will cover it for you. That insurance is there. It's stable. You can count on it. However, you have to engage in the lifestyle changes and in the care management program that wraps around that prescription so that you have the best opportunity for success. And when you do those things, when you engage, then your contribution is going to be X. If you choose not to engage, then your contribution is going to be Y. And so you have to put more money on the table, so to speak.
So you're figuring those things out. And Kristin, one of the things that is just sort of like, this is, I'll just say, a buzzy space. Behavioral health, changes, to solve might be chronic conditions or, pre-health conditions or things of that nature. So there's a lot of noise out there. There's some evidence for certain things, but then evidence that contradicts, progress that might be out there. So as a person responsible for strategy, as a taking sort of whatever you currently have and advancing it for your organization, what do you do? What's your process for staying sharp, making decisions when you're literally writing a new playbook that doesn't exist? How do you go about doing that work?
Gosh, I think at the heart of it, honestly, it really does go back to the thing I mentioned earlier, which is, I have that hero in my mind, right? I have that person in my mind that, really what I want for every healthcare consumer in the US is I want them to be the hero in their healthcare journey, right? I want them to have the helpers and the tools and the guides along that way so that they can complete that hero's journey. And I mean, that's how I really see Vitality. I see Vitality as a really powerful helper and guide that can be with that hero all along the way so that they have that edge to make the better decision, to stick with something because while it's hard right now, future you is really going to appreciate it, and to be able to help them kind of hold that in their mind's eye while they're working with the hard thing. So that's really the thing that like keeps me motivated, and it's not even about keeping me motivated. I mean, it's very motivating. It's very exciting because you see it all the time, both personally and professionally, with individuals that are navigating healthcare in the US. It is incredibly challenging. And then as far as, really staying on top of, like what are the opportunities today? And then where do I see things going in the future? There's really three things going on that I'm watching really closely. And I think are really exciting. One is that, slowly, steadily, we're shifting risk to the individuals, right? So financial risk for healthcare is very squarely landing on the consumer's shoulders. And candidly, I worry about that. I don't know that the average healthcare consumer understands what that means to hold the financial risk for your healthcare choices and for your health risk, like combining those two things together. I think it's really complex. And so I worry about that. And so thinking about, how do we help bridge that understanding gap, right? I think about, a similar thing is like your tax liability, right? Once people understand their tax profile,
Yep.
then they start thinking differently about, okay, do I take a standard deduction? Do I, right? So it's
Yep.
kind of the same idea is where I approach it. And then I think some of the other pieces that I'm watching really carefully are, this race to new sites of care delivery,
Yep.
right? So we're trying to get more care at home, more virtual care, more telehealth, remote monitoring.
Yep.
These are areas, in many of those areas, Vitality is already doing a lot of work. And
Yep.
so I think that makes a lot of sense for us to continue to lean in there. And so I'm really excited about that. And then I'm also really excited about when we think about healthcare payers are more and more being asked to influence, to take responsibility for, to really quantify non-clinical interventions and the social determinants and the way that these influence and impact the outcomes that we can expect any individual in our population to have. And that's a really hard space for a payer to be, right? Because they don't have a lot of control over those things.
Yep.
And yet they're being asked to account for it and then to help influence it to the good.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another, what we think about where well-being meets care and that intersection point.
Yep.
That's something I'm really interested in just continuing to dig into where we're seeing leaders emerge. So thinking about, like even just the Z codes and the way CMS is thinking, okay, can we capture this? But also looking at, school sites, looking at, the CBOs and the way that they need more support, right? Because it's one thing just to say, oh, here, I'm writing a prescription for you to go to the food pharmacy down the street. But does that food pharmacy have enough funding?
Right.
Like
Does it have
take the traffic?
I mean, just the level of breadth of complexity that you just outlined in terms of the things that you're thinking about, but also what I'm also hearing and what you're saying is just, levers that you're thinking about, because the magic formula does not exist yet in this healthcare system to solve the problems that you are working so hard on. And, having 60 million years of data points is amazing. And if you can find the way, whether it's between, financial returns, I love the example of like how people think about their taxes, actually that you're looking at that and education there and how that might apply to healthcare financial risk. That's just sounds really promising, and because these problems are large. And so I'm rooting for you. I want you to solve all of these problems. Kristin, I want to move a little bit back to you and just in terms of this career trajectory as you're doing these important work of today. And I noticed that in your background that you also have an advanced degree, which you got while you were still on your executive career trajectory. And it's so hard to be in school in and of itself. It's so hard to have, a very important and demanding job. And then yet you went back to school. So I'm just interested as to why, and, why was that important for you to pursue?
Yeah,
And first of all, fantastic. Congratulations for doing that. I mean, let me not say that. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a couple things. I was on a track for executive positions, and my sponsor and advisor at that time, really encouraged me to look at an advanced degree. Said, when you think about how you look on paper, most executives have an advanced degree. And so this is something that will serve you. And I think she was right. Absolutely. So from that perspective alone, I think that was really wise advice. And then I chose to pursue informatics because my undergrad is in comparative literature. So if you want to geek out about John Milton, I understand you're also
coffee shops. I got it. I got it.
Yeah. So that was my undergrad. And so I really wanted to kind of round out, that feeling of expertise and the ability to, really grapple with the systems and data issues that payers in particular are dealing with today. So I focused on a kind of different area to round out my undergrad, and then doing it while working. I don't recommend it. It was definitely really hard. I'm incredibly lucky. I have a very, very strong partner in my husband. And at the time, my children weren't tiny. They were old enough that they were able to root for me and all of that. And then, I finished that up in, 2018, I think is when I finished that degree. It's a little bit of a blur, right? Like, so I remember when I had a 3-year-old and a newborn, that time of my life was kind of a blur. And my advanced degree I did it in 18 months. That was also a little bit of a blur.
Oh my gosh, that is, I'm a little bit groggy just thinking
Yeah.
about it. So, well, congratulations for doing it. And so it was advice, you took it,
Mhm.
and did it help you? Was it worth it?
I think it did, really, because one part about going back to school after having some time under my belt in
Mhm.
a professional setting was I think I was lucky enough to know what I didn't know,
Yep.
and so I approached the program I think a little differently than my cohorts.
Yep.
In any advanced degree, obviously there's always some element of business. So
Yep.
got to do some corporate finance. I got to do some governance. In addition to the topic specific deep dives we were doing in database and others. And so that was really helpful for
Yep.
me. And I think also, sometimes the distance between school and then work, you don't necessarily get to apply. But there were quite a few things that
Yep.
I did turn around and I said, this actually would help me in my meetings like
Wow.
right now.
That's
So
awesome.
even though I still don't recommend it. It was really hard, but
Yeah.
that was definitely the silver
That's a
lining for
very, very
sure.
hard thing to do. Well, again, congratulations on that. But let's also talking about investing in yourself. And we're
Mhm.
here at the WBL conference.
Mhm.
And so the women business leaders, you've been a member for a number of years. And I think about it as investing in yourself, being part of this professional executive network. So why did you join? Why do you keep coming back?
I joined because at the time, the organization I was with, the president, who she was on her final year, she's getting ready to retire, and she was the only person in our organization that was a member of WBL.
Mhm.
And so that was actually my little crack opening in the door that I said, well,
Yeah.
she gets a lot of great speaker ideas and she gets a lot.
Wow.
So, I really think we need
Smooth.
representation, right? So I kind of secured the funding, made sure that stayed put in
Excellent.
terms of making sure that budget was there. And then for myself, I'm sure you've heard this the whole time we've been at this conference. WBL is very special.
Mhm.
I think, one of the mottos that Lynn reminds us all is there's no such thing as a cold call.
Yep.
And especially in my line of work where, a big part of my jobs, all of them, is in many ways I consider myself a professional listener. It really is like, do I understand the problem statement?
Mhm.
Do I understand, what it is that's motivating this other person,
Mhm.
on their hero's journey that I'm trying to be a part of? And so WBL is a huge resource for me to do some of those exploratory conversations.
So give us one of those stories. Did you ever make any of those cold calls or?
Oh, sure. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, oh gosh, when in the Health Plan Alliance, we were standing up a Medicare Advantage kind of learning collaborative.
Yeah.
And so I had my gut instincts as to what I thought the key issues would be or what I thought, we would really need to be tackling. And I had thought through, okay, here are the 5, potential faculty members I might call upon, but I didn't really know them.
Yep.
And so I was very much, I was uncomfortable,
Yep.
right? Like kind of making that final call. So then, just reached out to my WBL network and had a few really helpful, candid conversations. And 3 of them I got thumbs up. 2 of them I did not get thumbs up, but then I
Yep.
got, okay, but here's an alternative you can think about.
Great information.
And oh, by the way, one of your hypotheses isn't quite right. I don't know that I agree with that. Have you thought about it this way? And so, and you can do that in 30 minutes,
Yep.
very efficient, because I think every WBL member really does, you don't have to worry about like warming up the relationship per se. You can just kind of go right to the thing.
Yeah, the power of the network is just
Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so Kristin, I want to close out with a couple things. So you're on this executive leadership journey, you've got this big new job, you're killing it. What are your best professional habits that keep you sharp?
This one might sound mundane, but I stand by it. I get 8 to 9 hours of sleep every single night.
Really?
I like, some people feel really excited about like staying up late and having fun and then sleeping in. I'm genuinely really excited on Friday evening. It's the one evening of the week that nobody needs anything from me at home.
Uh-huh.
And so like 7 o'clock, I'm like, I love you all. It's pizza night, so I'm going to bed, and I go to bed at 7.
Oh my
It's like,
gosh.
I know that sounds atrocious.
No, I'm envious. Boy, that kind of like sleep like that would be amazing.
I really believe in the power of sleep. So that's my first really strong professional habit is I am a recovering overachiever.
Mhm.
I again grew up in a military family. had a strong trajectory for things. And so in my teens and in my 20s, I was somebody who would just drive myself into the ground,
Okay.
and I didn't really take the time sometimes to really step back and go, am I spending my energy on the right things? And I did. I felt like I was just spending my energy.
Yep.
And now that I'm in my 40s, my energy is pretty precious.
Yep.
And it's not unlimited.
Yep.
And so
it seems unlimited. I just want to say, just like, no.
the glitter and the duct is working. It's something that I'm much more thoughtful about how I gift it. And so I think that's probably the second, kind of guide that I would give anybody else that's kind of up and coming is, if you're exhausted. So, tired, but satisfied. Right. That's okay. That just means you're working hard, but you're doing work that you love. But if you're literally like, I feel like a husk of a person, I'm exhausted, then, for me, that's where I pause and I'm like, okay, I'm not spending my energy wisely. Like there's something here.
Okay. So those are good habits. So what are bad habits that you're trying to break in terms of just improvement for your professional self?
Yeah. A big one for me is making sure that I protect the time for deep work. A big part of my role is amplifying the work of others and being available to my team. It's also one that I do get a lot of satisfaction out of. I genuinely love coaching, mentoring. But it does mean that my calendar can get a little out of control.
Yeah, that's really hard to protect that time too.
That is something that I am always actively having to course correct, course correct. So I haven't nailed that one down yet. You put it on the calendar, but then it ends up getting.
Well, you are an achiever. So we know that, you'll be continuing to address it. Okay. So Kristin, last question, just as you think about just sort of your journey ahead and the years that you'll be just, working so hard for these heroes that you keep front and center for yourself, maybe just advice for others, just other aspiring people who want to be leaders someday like you. What's the advice that you would give to them?
I think that for women, especially, I think that there's two things that I know I've wrestled with and I see other really talented women wrestle with is just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. So more and more opportunities become available to you when you're excellent. But it doesn't mean you have to say yes to every single one. And then the other thing that I think women can do sometimes is we really value our committees, right? And I have one too. I have a personal board of directors, right? 5 people. They're my kitchen cabinet people that I'm like, okay, everybody, we got to huddle up. Big thing happening. I want to hear your thoughts, and that's valuable. And I think that at the end of the day, though, you're the CEO of your own life. And so I think really getting clear and centered about what are the things that you want to do? What are the things that give you joy? And yes, you're going to be tired, but satisfied and not exhaust you. Because just because you can doesn't mean you should. And if you do everything that you can do, you're going to be exhausted and you're going to be spending that energy and not really feeling that it was in service to something that kind of sets you along your own hero's journey. So I'm a big Joseph Campbell fan, by the way.
Oh, what?
Joseph Campbell.
Okay.
The hero's journey.
Okay. Well, I love
it's a fantastic book.
So I will now have to pick that up, but that's sort of management of energy because it is a finite resource. And when you have it, you can just do so much with it, whether it's in a moment or on a big, project or something that you're leading. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And that has been an excellent Inspiring Women conversation. I've been speaking with Kristin Rodriguez, and Kristin, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
This has been an episode of Inspiring Women with Laurie McGraw. Please subscribe, rate, and review. We are produced by Kate Cruz at Executive Podcast Solutions. More episodes can be found on inspiringwomen.show. I am Laurie McGraw, and thank you for listening.